What's up YouTube? Welcome to Tech Savvy Buyer. So I got my hands on the Red Devil RX 590. This is made by PowerColor. As you guys know, the RX 590 is just about a week old at this point, so getting some of these cards wasn't super hard because it wasn't sold out everywhere. So I did manage to get this off of Newegg. I've done some performance tests on this, I've done some benchmarks, and I'm going to give you guys my full review on this coming up. So welcome back. So let's jump into this right away. Overall, I just want to show you guys physically how this card looks. It's a very, very beefy card. Almost takes up about 2 to 2.5 PCI Express slots. And it's overall got a very, very thick heatsink that you guys can see there. On the top, they've got their Red Devil branding. They've also got a switch where you can control the silence of the fans, essentially. You can turn it to overclock mode, which means the fans would always be running, or you can turn it to silent, which means that the fans won't run unless this thing crosses a temperature of 60 degrees centigrade. On the other side, you have an LED switch, which basically this Red Devil logo here will turn red. You can turn that on and off. I mean, I don't really see the point of this, to be honest, because I'm assuming most people who put a GPU in their case will have it so that's inaccessible and you're not going to be playing with switches on it. Besides that, the back has a pretty nice back plate. Overall, pretty good design. I'd say aesthetically, I don't think this is a very bad looking card. I think it's actually nice. It would go really well with someone who's doing a red color theme in their build. Now again, for those of you guys who are following my channel, I picked this up specifically to complete my wife's computer build. Almost done. I'm just waiting on a few more parts that I did order as part of Black Friday. Most specifically the AIO and the PSU bundle that was being sold by Cooler Master for 119 bucks. So that one is a steal. Just waiting on a few days to get that in my hands. But anyways, this card, guys, this is the Hail Mary for 1080p gaming. Okay, I've done a bunch of tests with this. I played around with this all day today. And all I'm going to say is this thing just destroys anything at 1080p. At ultra detail settings, I tested several games. I'm going to share those benchmarks with you guys here in a second. And I also did some 3D Mark time spy tests, some Fire Strike tests, and even some other ones that were in the selections of the options of using 3D Mark. But overall, I mean, I'm pretty impressed with the card. I think value-wise, this is priced in at $279. The RX 580, which this precedes, is for $229, so only 50 bucks more. But then again, the performance of this guy sits right in between a GTX 1060 and a GTX 1070, which is a really nice sweet spot to be in. I know a lot of other reviewers who had their hands on the 590s before I have said mixed things about it, more or less saying that it's just a rebranded RX 580. And I tend to agree and disagree at some points. It's not, while the architecture is the same and similar to an RX 580, it's performing better than an RX 580. Now overall, this runs laps around the RX 580, it runs laps around the GTX 1060 6 gigs as well. This is an 8GB card. Overall, I didn't see any kind of issues with this when using this. No screen freezing, no nothing. Again, benchmarks I'm saving just for the end so you guys can see the results of how good the performance is on this card. What I do want to tell you, certain things I did not like about this card off the bat. So number one, there's a coil whine issue with this specific brand, or this specific card with the Red Devil card. When I plug this in, when it's under load, it makes a very obnoxious sound. I'm going to play it so you guys can see or try and hear it. And I don't know if you guys could hear that or not, but overall, like, it was pretty annoying. It wasn't a good sound to hear, especially if you're trying to keep a very silent case build or a silent build altogether. That's one thing to keep an eye out for. The other thing is when the fans are at full RPM, it is also very loud. So overall, like, it's not a super quiet card when you're putting the fans on full or you got a lot of heavy load on it. But those are the only two things I'd say that are cons on this card. So aside from those other two cons, I would say this card totally destroys any 1080p gaming that you're trying to do. This card is more than enough to do any kind of 1080p gaming that you're looking at. If you want to set up your games to ultra graphical details, turn every setting up to the max possible, and that's what I did in my tests. This is what you want to look at for 1080p. Now you can also play games in 2K resolution. Some games were running more than 60 frames per second at max settings at 2K resolution. And even in some cases it did go up to like 40 to 45 frames per second for 4K gaming, which is pretty, that's not something to shove aside, considering this is only a $280 card. Now, I'm not saying that this is a 4K capable card. What I mean to say is that if you want to experiment with it, you can go ahead and experiment with it. I didn't overclock this card because overclocking, it's kind of like the silicone lottery. You know, I might yield different results than you'll yield when you try it, but obviously when you overclock a card, you're going to get better performance out of it and better frame rates as well. So with that being said, and that pushed aside, just based on stock performance with no overclock going at all, the standard clock frequency on this I think is about 1576 megahertz, and the overall RAM, like I said in this with the VRAM, and this is 8 gigabytes. So it's not a bad card, guys. This is pretty good. I would recommend this to anyone who is trying to get a 1080p gaming card that wants to not break the bank. You have a pretty good budget that you want to do. And even if those people, so aside from just gaming people, if you're into content creation, kind of like what I do, if you want to do 4K video editing, this is fine for that. This is great. You don't need to go and get, you know, a GTX 1080 or 2080 or any of the newer generation cards made by Nvidia. Or even for that matter, if you think of AMD's cards, you don't need an RX 56 or a Vega 64. This will work just fine for content creation as well. But without mumbling anymore, let's roll those benchmarks so you guys can take a look. So what'd you guys think? Benchmarks wise, I think it performed really well. I don't know why it got the kind of level of hate that it did. Maybe it's just because, you know, AMD's trying to pull a fast one and say that this is a whole new card and everyone's getting excited right around holiday time where people can do their Black Friday shopping and get these. And, you know, most people think that it's more or less like an RX 580, just a little bit more of a boost on the clock. And I guess essentially that's what it is. But then again, you're only paying 50 bucks more. RX 580s traditionally are $229. This one is at $279. So it's not a huge price difference. If you compare to the 1060, which I would much rather compare this to, because you've got Nvidia's model to compare this with. If you look at the two just side by side, I would pick this over that any day, hands down. Doesn't matter if that's an EVGA one for the win, doesn't matter whatever brand that is or aftermarket. I would take the RX 590 over a GTX 1060, 6 gigabyte or 3 gigabyte, whichever one you throw, any day. So I guess that tells you where I sit with this. I think it's a great card. I think, again, like if you're trying to do 1080p gaming, this is where you're going. If you want to do some light 2K gaming, this is also for you. It's not a 4K gaming card. It will, however, support any kind of 4K other stuff you're doing on your computer. You're not going to have any issues with that. So let me know what you guys think about the Red Devil RX 590. Are you guys going to be getting one of these for yourselves in a new build? Do you think this video was useful? If so, let me know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed my content, as always, let me know as well. And go ahead and drop a like and hit that subscribe button if you aren't already. Stay tuned for that new PC build video that's coming up. I'm going to make it really, really easy. Drop it down in layman's terms. It's going to be complete beginner level for anyone who is new into building PCs, or you're trying to get away from console gaming, anything like that. But other than that, guys, that is pretty much the end of this video. So until my next one, take care.